Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Stirrups and Spirits. I'm Tamra. Glad you could join us. Today, we are going to be talking with a global business leader and speaker. She's had TEDx Talks. She is known as a creator of cultures, a problem untangler. Her name is Christy Pruitt-Haynes. She is a cigar sommelier. She is a newly certified bourbon steward, and she's got a lot to talk about tonight. So enjoy this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us, give us a follow on all our social channels, which will be listed at the end of this podcast. And I hope you enjoy. So tell me, who is Christy Pruitt-Haynes?
Oh, what a big question. So I'm a mom and aunt. That's always what I lead with because of everything that I do in my life. Those are always those are the two relationships that mean the most to me and I think have defined me most over the years. So I have a daughter who is 20. She's a junior in college, and a niece who's 24, and she is a chef and engaged. And I am incredibly proud of both of them. But beyond that, I am a speaker and consultant. And then very recently, I've become an executive bourbon steward and a certified cigar sommelier. So, in doing that, I am now looking at ways of combining what I love and what I was honestly spending a whole lot of my time and money on with ways to kind of lean into it a bit more professionally. So, I am absolutely enjoying that process. And then throughout all of it, I am really discovering who I am. So, it was really kind of an interesting question to start with because I'm figuring out who Christy is. Over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of things change in my life. I've gotten divorced. I lost my best friend to suicide. I became an empty nester. So I suddenly sort of found myself kind of in this different time and space where I was doing a lot of things alone that I'd never done before. And it gave me an opportunity to really sort of stop and figure out, what do I enjoy? Who am I? And how do I want to spend this next phase of my life? So I've done a lot of exploration. I'm actually doing something that I call my solo dating, where I am taking myself out on 26 different solo dates that each start with a different letter of the alphabet to really figure out what it is I enjoy and how I want to define myself. So, any definition I give of who Christy is, I feel like I need to end it with the three little ellipses after it because that story's still developing. I'm still figuring all of that out, but I am loving the process.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I have followed you recently on Facebook and your solo dating, and that looks like a lot of fun. That's a project that I think anybody could take on,
Yes,
solo or
absolutely.
not. Just it looks like a really great way to be creative in what you go find to do as far as your activities.
It really is. It's so creative. For me, I'm trying to do things that I've never done before. So it gives me a chance to discover new hobbies or new things that I really enjoy, and sometimes discover things that I absolutely never want to do again. So that's been the result of some of it. But it's incredibly creative. And I have done everything from indoor skydiving to kayaking to blending my own bourbon, which was a lot of fun. So I've had some really cool experiences. I am up to the letter L. So the next one is going to challenge me a lot. I am going to, and it sounds very boring. I'm putting together a Lego set, but it is a 4,500 piece Lego set, and
Oh
there
my
isn't
gosh.
a map for it. So I just have a picture that I am trying to recreate in Legos. It is going to force me to be incredibly detailed, which I'm typically not. It's going to force me to really focus and be quiet for a long time, which I'm typically not. So I think it's going to test my patience and test my detail orientation. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm looking forward to it. And if nothing else, I'll have a cool picture at the end, which hopefully at least slightly resembles what it's supposed to look like, but time will tell.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine trying to sit there for however many hours that's going to take you to try and put
Yes.
Legos together. You need a small child to help you with that.
I really do. I really do because they, for whatever reason, can hone in on it, and I don't have that ability. So I guess I'm going to have to develop it quickly.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, kudos to you for jumping into that because oh my
Thank
gosh, what
you.
a challenge! Legos in themselves are a challenge. So,
Yes. Yes.
so you recently were certified as a cigar sommelier. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell me what a cigar sommelier does.
Absolutely. So I knew I enjoyed smoking cigars. They each have such a unique flavor profile. They actually remind me a lot of whiskey in so many ways because it's a limited number of ingredients that go into making them. I mean, it's really just tobacco, but the slight nuances in flavor and the variation that you get depending on where the leaf was grown or how it was grown or when it was harvested really created this, just really incredibly unique experience of just enjoying a cigar. But the more I did it,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to learn more about it. And then I realized I wanted to be able to introduce this to others, especially to women. When I originally started smoking cigars, it was completely a man's world. I would be typically the only woman in the cigar bar, which I'll be honest, I kind of enjoyed. The odds were always in my favor. Um, but
Sure.
it's so relaxing and so enjoyable. So I wanted to learn more about it, but I realized in order to really be able to speak intelligently and share it with others, I needed to dig a bit deeper. So I sort of started learning. I took classes. I had to take an incredibly long test that I hope to never have to repeat. But because of that, I can now look at a cigar and say, okay, this leaf was grown in Nicaragua, so you can expect this kind of flavor profile, or this one was grown with direct sunlight versus shade, so you can expect these sort of nuances and really find what I
Wow.
like and find the different comparisons, but more importantly, introduce that and share it with others. And I have
Mm-hmm.
so thoroughly enjoyed that process. So I now have all of my friends who will sit and talk about cigars and the ones they like, the ones they don't like, and just the idea of going to cigar bars. There's a whole cigar bar culture that is so welcoming. It doesn't matter your gender, your race, your political affiliation. Once you walk through those doors, you're welcomed and you can have just really cool conversations with interesting people. And I think that's something we
Mm-hmm.
need right now in this country. We need places and spaces that really unify us. And this has been one of the
Yep.
few that I found recently. So I am all in with it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And you haven't been to Bourbon Women's Sip yet, have you? Is this going to be your first year?
This is going to be my first year and I can't wait.
So you'll find that same environment there as well. So
Good.
SIP, what we're talking about is the Bourbon Women's annual symposium. It's we call it Summer Camp for Bourbon Women. It's our annual conference in Louisville, Kentucky, and last year was my first year, and it is that it's exactly that place. It is a place where it
Good.
doesn't matter where you come from, what your background beliefs are. We're all there because we have one thing in common, and that is the pure absolute love of bourbon for whatever
Mhm.
reason. And it doesn't even matter how you like to drink it. It's the fact that you like it in the first place that makes
Yes.
everyone there a sister in this giant conglomerate of all these women. And it is just the most amazing place. Last year I totally stepped out of my comfort zone and sat at tables at the communal meals where I said, hey, I'm going to go sit at this table and see who I meet, and
Hmm.
sat with a dozen complete strangers and met 12 new friends every meal because we all had something in common to talk about. And it was a great experience, but I felt like there was no way to be ostracized or looked down upon or outcast for any reason whatsoever, because we all still had something in common. It was a very safe place to be. So it sounds like the cigar bar is another avenue for that same type of feeling.
It really is. And you said it yourself, it's that common interest. And I think, I'm a speaker as my professional career. And one of the things I talk a lot about in so many of the talks I give that when we take the time to get to know people just enough to find one thing we have in common with them, then we can create and build that relationship from there. Because we understand that it doesn't matter what differences exist, there are still things that unify us all. And that's something that I found in cigars. I have absolutely found it in bourbon. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited about SIF. I can't wait to go to my first one because I'm very much expecting to have that same kind of experience.
Oh, absolutely. You'll come away with a whole new slew of friends.
Good, 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 good.
So you just also got your bourbon steward certification. How did you enjoy going through that?
It was amazing. Bourbon, it's so interesting kind of my journey to bourbon and whiskey in general. I many years ago, I didn't drink it at all. I was one of those people that said, "Nope, any brown liquor tastes like gasoline. I don't want to touch it." So I avoided it at all costs. But my then husband at the time, it was his drink of choice. So, and I wanted to find something that we could sort of do and enjoy together. So I threw him a bourbon tasting party for one of his birthdays. And I said, I am determined to find one thing that I really like of everything that we're sampling. So I did. I found one that I like. And what's funny is now it tastes so sweet to me, I can barely drink it because, but that's where I started. That's where I was at the time. I said, give me the thing that is closest to Kool-Aid, and that's what I want to drink on. So I found that one, and then over the years just sort of developed my palate. And it was that same thing, very similar to cigars, being able to taste those subtle differences, and something that has the exact same ingredients can have so much variety in how it tastes was just fascinating to me. So also just wanted to learn more about it, wanted to learn the process a bit more. So I went through to get my executive bourbon steward certification, and it was the most amazing day. You start with literally grinding the corn. So I'm there, kind of dumping corn into the meal and watching that process, and then creating the mash bill. So pulling together the different grains that are going into it and seeing it go into the fermenter and kind of going through that entire process. And then learning so much about the history of bourbon and the history of whiskey and spirits from around the world. So how Scotch is different than Canadian whiskey versus American whiskey, and that sort of thing. And then we had this wonderful experience where we were learning how to really smell to so that almost get our palate ready for what we were going to experience when we drank it. So going through that
Oh,
nosing exercise, and then again at the end of the day, there's another test. I feel like I've been taking a lot of tests this year, but at least they've been on topics that I have truly enjoyed. So it was another moment where there were probably around 40 or so of us in the class. And, it was that same kind of feel. Once we were all there, we knew we were there because we loved bourbon or we loved whiskey and we wanted to learn more. So it was that same kind of just family feel. There were some people there who were distillers, there were some people there who were had other certifications, and then some people who just really liked bourbon and wanted to learn more about it. So it didn't matter what brought you to that point. The fact that you were there kind of made you part of this larger group. So again, it was a very kind of unifying moment. And like I said, we definitely need more of those right now.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So now that you have this intimate knowledge of cigars and you have all this new knowledge of bourbon, and I'm sure you are starting to pair the two together and saying certain flavors
Yes.
of cigars and certain flavors of bourbons come together. And I know this is a new, I don't want to call it a fad because I don't think it's new, and I don't think it's, something temporary. It's definitely something that's here to stay. But I think it
Hmm.
is definitely something that is on the rise as far as popularity now, especially with
Yes.
um, women in particular.
Hmm.
It didn't used to be the norm to see women enjoying a bourbon and a cigar, and you certainly see a lot more of it over the last even year or two than you would have 5, 10, 15 years ago. So
You
it's been
really
really
do.
interesting to see the
And so with
growth
that,
of
I have
women in
actually
whiskey.
started, I have a new Instagram account called the Sip and Smoke Experience, which is all about pairing together that bourbon or whiskey with a cigar, and how the one flavor accentuates the other, and what flavors go well together in one experience. It's like the commercial "Two great tastes that taste great together." I think that's a it's some candy that has that as its motto, but the exact same thing
Yep.
applies to bourbon and to cigars. So I'm now going to be taking people through the process of sampling both and figuring out what you like, and then pairing them together and seeing how one changes the other and one enhances the flavor profile of the other. And you're so right. It's something that women are really coming to more now than any other time. And what's interesting is women tend to have a more refined palate than men. So while each of these have been
Hmm.
industries that have been very heavily male dominated, women are now kind of coming into our own. And you see so many women, both in the cigar and the bourbon and whiskey world, because our ability to taste those subtle differences and to pair things up that go well together is just so incredible and so enhanced, as it compares to me. And it's one of the benefits of being a girl. I'll claim it, and I'm one that I'm glad that we have, because we're really able to enjoy the spirit and to enjoy the flavor of the leaf that much more. So I've started putting those together, and creating those tasting experiences for other. And eventually, the plan is to open my own cigar bar, and it is going to have a very extensive bourbon and whiskey list.
Oh, I can't wait. That's going to be so exciting. I'll be there for grand opening for sure.
Perfect, perfect. You are on the list. You are on the
I
list.
love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So, do you have a favorite bourbon?
I have a favorite bourbon of the moment. I don't want.
That's going to be my
I'm
next question. This week,
Yes,
this
and
week, do
that's
you have
how
a
I always answer it, is like, as of 5:22 p.m. on whatever today is. Right now, my favorite pour, and I'm going to say two of them because they're very different, but it's a toss up. I really love Joseph Mangus, their cigar blend. It is so smooth. The caramel notes that come out of it. Obviously, it's one that does pair really well with a cigar, especially a
favorite?
milder cigar. But even by itself, all of the Joseph Mangus products are amazing. All of their beverages are just wonderful. But the cigar blend is probably my favorite, and I am happy to drink that all day long. The other is MB Roland, their Dark Fire. It is probably the most unique bourbon I have ever had, because they first roast their corn before grinding it up. So when you first smell it, it smells like you just opened the most wonderful bottle of barbecue sauce. Like, that's what comes to mind when you first smell it. But the flavor of it has this deep, rich, smoky profile that's followed up with real brown sugar and kind of the caramel notes. But I have never tasted anything else like it. So MB Rollins, their Dark Fire, all of their products, again, kind of like Joseph Mangus, I've never had anything of theirs I didn't like. But their Dark Fire has
Hmm.
got to be one of my favorites right now. And then that Joseph Mangus cigar blend, both of them are amazing.
Awesome. All right. I have not had the dark fire. I'm definitely going to have to look into that. That sounds
Yes,
really
yes,
good.
it is worth a pour.
It sounds like it would pair nicely with barbecue that has that sweet baby Ray's Vidalia onion barbecue sauce on
It would,
it.
it would. As I was drinking it, what I kept thinking is, I want some brisket or like a really meaty rib right now. And you're right, that sweet baby rays would be wonderful. But I also think, and I am not a chef by any means, but if anyone out there is a cook and you want to create a barbecue sauce that has this in it, I guarantee I will buy a bottle. So I think it would be great added to a barbecue sauce even. So I'm hoping somebody makes that, because I'm ready to try it.
Oh, we need to get in touch with Heather Wibbles about that. She's great at experimenting with new flavors. So
Yes,
she's made all kinds of bitters. Maybe we need to start getting her on sauces now. So
I
Heather, pay
think
attention.
so. Yes, I will stand in line for that one.
Oh, all right. So you've talked some about you know, all the things that have made you, Christy, who you are, and what you do to enjoy life. Um, And you've talked a little bit about your solo dating, which I want to go back and kind of touch on. And what brought
Yes.
you to the point where you're doing this self reinvention and your solo dating project?
So it came from a place, and sometimes I will say it came from a very real place of necessity. Because in about a 12-month period, four out of the five people that I spent the majority of my time with were gone in some way. So my niece moved about 4 hours away, which before that she had lived literally 2 minutes from me. So to go from 2 minutes to 4 hours was a dramatic difference. Then my daughter left for college. She's in school about 8 hours away. I got divorced, which, very necessary, but very difficult. And, thankfully it wasn't a contentious divorce, but it is still a major life shift. And then my best friend passed away, and he was the person who was, I will always say, was almost the other half of my brain. He was the keeper of my secrets and my biggest cheerleader. So he passed away, and all of this happened in late 2021 to middle of 2022. So over a few months, my world just kind of imploded, and I didn't know what to do. And so often, especially as women, if you have kids, so many of the things that you do, so many of the ways you spend your time is centered around your kids. So and even the friends that you have tend to be their friends' parents. So that's who you hang out with. So your social circle is very much around them. So when you become an empty nester, it isn't just your child going away and all of the worrying that you do because they are gone, and you do worry a lot and you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights, but it's also that almost takes your social circle away from you. So that part of it was gone. My husband, now my ex husband, had moved away several hours, and my best friend were all gone. So I found myself in this point that I never thought I would be, where my entire norm, everything that I typically use to kind of define myself, because we often define ourselves by our relationships. I was a wife and a mom and an aunt. And while I was still a mom and an aunt, the nature of those relationships were so different. Parenting from a distance is very different than having your child in the house with you. And I was no longer anybody's wife, and I no longer had a best friend. So all of these things happened at the same time. And my first thought was, well, I'm going to go to bed and I will wake up in 50 years. And, I was just content to say, I don't know, I didn't know how to begin my next day.
Right.
I knew quickly, it's like, this is not the end of my life. I am too young to just call it a day and go to sleep. So I had to figure out some things to really keep me going. So I thought back, and the last time I didn't define myself as either a wife or a mom or an aunt is when I was in my 20s. And the stuff I did in my 20s didn't necessarily appeal to me in the same way now that I'm approaching 50. I'll be 50 next year. So,
Right.
you know, I can't do the things I used to do. Even if I wanted to, my body just won't let me do the things that I did in my 20s. So I had to figure out what was next and what activities I wanted to do and what hobbies I wanted to have. But I also realized I needed to kind of define those for myself and by myself, because I recognize that the only person I am guaranteed to spend the rest of my life with is me. So I needed to get to know me, and I needed to fall back in love with me. So as a result of that came my solo dating. I was going to spend some very deliberate time with just myself, but I was going to spend it doing things that hopefully I would enjoy or at least learn a lesson from. So that's where it was birthed from. So it was truly came from a place of necessity, but I am so incredibly thankful for it because I have learned so much about myself. I've learned and I've grown so much. I am a stronger person than I ever recognized that I was. So it's something that I think everybody should do, ideally before your life feels like it's falling apart. I promise it'll be a lot more fun when you can do it when you're starting from a place of happy. But for me, it really, I needed something to re-energize me, and this has absolutely done it. So it's one of the best decisions I've made, and I am loving the process.
That's fantastic. And you seem to have drawn from your own inner strength to just sort of pull yourself up out of out of all of this bad stuff that had happened and just say, I got to keep going. I don't have an
Yeah.
option.
Exactly. And that's what I had to realize. I said, the sun is still coming up. I still have air in my lungs. My heart is still beating. This is an opportunity that everybody doesn't have. So I am going to take full advantage of it. And no matter what life throws at me, I'm going to find a way to enjoy it. I said in a speech I gave once, every situation has a silver lining, even if you have to bring your own can of silver spray paint to create it. And
I
so that's
love
what I
that.
was doing. This was me showing up with my can of silver spray paint to create this silver lining. But now it's there and I see it and I'm leaning into it and it's just so much fun. So much fun.
So, what letter of the alphabet so far that you've gotten to has been your favorite?
Oh, I think G was a lot of fun. For G, I did glass blowing, which was so creative. It is much more physical than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of work, the amount of air it takes to blow the glass and just the heat that you feel coming off of all of the equipment. But I made this really cool, it's now my favorite glass to drink out of. So I made this really cool glass and it's, uniquely mine. And that was something that I didn't know that I would necessarily enjoy, but glass blowing was a lot of fun. I also created my own blend of bourbon, which for very obvious reasons I enjoyed. So I went to one of the distilleries here in Nashville and you sample from 6 different barrels and I picked out my 3 favorite ones and then I determined which I liked best. So I did 40% from 2 of the barrels and 20% from another and created my own custom blend. And I'm very sad because I'm down to only like this much left in the bottle. So I'm going to have to go and do it again.
I
But
was going
that
to
was
say,
a lot
time
of
to do it
fun.
again.
Yes, yes, I'm doing it again. And now I get to drink my custom bourbon out of my glass that I made and, and
Nice.
just kind of surround myself by stuff that is very, very Christy. So those are probably the two that stand out most. Although I've loved almost all of them. I went to a horse race. I went to the Kentucky Derby by myself. So that was my H activity. And to be one of 150,000 people felt a little overwhelming, but kind of like you did at SIP last year, you just start talking to folks. And, it was
Yeah,
that same thing where everybody's there because they love the environment. I'm sure all of the Woodford Reserve that was being poured didn't hurt anybody's time there. So that was a lot of fun. The indoor skydiving was amazing because that's something I'd wanted to do, but I had always been too heavy for it. So I've recently lost about 100 pounds. So that was a way for me to almost celebrate my weight loss because now I was light enough to just go up and down this tube effortlessly. So
that's
that was
great.
great. So I've taken something from each of the experiences, but if I were to go back and do some others, I'm definitely going to do the bourbon blending again and I will absolutely try glass blowing again.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So I was looking through your bio earlier,
Mhm.
and something that you have on there that you describe yourself, I thought was really interesting. You described yourself as akin to bacon, bourbon, and butter. You enhance all your collaborations, and I just absolutely love that because no one can do without any of those things. And it reminds me of something that I always say, that you should. Life is too short for fake friends, fake cheese, and fake butter.
Yes. And I agree with that completely. It is. You need authenticity in all 3 of those things to make your life that much better. And, it's funny. I was just talking one day and I was like, everything goes with bacon. Bacon makes whatever it's around just a little bit better. I don't care if it's something
Yep.
sweet, something salty, bacon makes it better. And I was like, but butter and bourbon kind of do the same thing. If you compare it with anything, nobody says no to butter. Like, who does that? In what life do you say, no, no, I don't need any more butter? Butter makes
Right.
everything phenomenal. So I was like, that's my goal. My goal is to always be like bacon, butter, and bourbon. And whatever I'm with, whoever I'm talking to, whatever project I'm working on, I want to leave it just a little bit better than I found it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And So people have described you as a problem untangler, and it sounds like you've even untangled problems for yourself, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I so admire the strength that you have to have dealt with everything that you've dealt with and come out of it shining and smiling and just bubbly. With it, that's the best word I have found so far to describe Christy is bubble. Christy is bubbly,
Yes.
and I
Well,
love that.
thank you. It is, and I will tell anybody, it was hard fought. It was hard fought to get to this place, and it took a lot of very deliberate action because it was incredibly easy to just say, nope, not doing anything today. I'm staying in bed, under the covers. Don't call me, don't talk to me.
Mhm.
And it took making the decision to live, which is really the best way I can put it. One thing I will say that made it a little easier is as all of these different losses were happening, a lot of them were hitting during my daughter's senior year of high school, especially losing my best friend. So he was an uncle to her. He had been there literally since the day she started kindergarten. So that was also a loss for her. And what I kept saying was, I cannot let his death be the defining moment of her senior year of high school because that
Mhm.
is such a hallmark year. And she has been looking forward to this and working for this for so long. I cannot freeze and I cannot let this be the thing that she remembers most for her senior year. So that
Right.
desire to be as good of a mom as possible kind of pulled me out of it, I think, a little sooner than I felt like coming out of it, quite honestly. But I needed her to see me keep going. And I needed her to even know in certain moments, and she would look at me, and we have a great relationship, and she has a very dry sense of humor. So there were times during her senior year she would look at me, and I'm sure I would just have this like look of almost devastation and sadness because I had so many of those moments. But in that, she would look, she's like, dead best friend moment. It's like, yep, dead best friend moment. She's like,
Aw.
it's okay, and she'd give me a hug and then we would talk about something else. But that was just our way to accept that this is something that happened, but not the only thing that happened. There are still other great things that are going on. I'm sure the fact that all of this is happening in the middle of a pandemic made it that much harder, but we got through it. And again, I made the choice to show up for her, but more importantly, I made the choice to show up for myself, because if not, I was going to have 40 years of misery, and that did not sound fun at all.
Right.
So yeah, I'm like, if we're still going to be here, if I'm still kicking and breathing and all of that, I got to make the best of it, because the time is going to pass regardless, and I get to choose how it passes. And I chose
Mhm.
for it to pass with joy and with happiness and with as much peace as possible.
That's great. Well,
Thank
I'm
you.
certainly glad that part of your reinvention and rediscovery of yourself has brought you into the bourbon world,
You and
because
me both.
you're going to be a great asset to the bourbon women. You're going to bloom in this group. It's a lot of fun. And for those that don't know and aren't familiar with bourbon women, you can check them out at bourbonwomen.org and look them up. There's 16 chapters across the country, and I'm one of the ambassadors for the Florida chapter, and we have a great time. We
Yes.
do events all over the place. We do national virtual tastings where tasting kits get sent out to your house. We all jump on a Zoom call and we drink bourbon together and talk about it and learn how to make cocktails together. And we go to our national conference together. It's a lot of fun. And I have learned in the last 2 years that I've been a member so much about bourbon. And you mentioned the history of bourbon. The history of bourbon is just, it astounds me. I mean,
Yes.
there's so much US history involved in the history of bourbon. I mean, they
Mhm.
go hand in hand, in the foundation of how our country was formed, how a lot of our legislature was built. Um,
Mhm.
it's incredible to go back and look at some of the stories. And to when I found out that some of the distilleries actually hire a historian to be part of their staff, you can do
Yes.
that? That's a real thing? I was like,
Yes.
what? I said, I want that kind of job. That is
Oh,
so cool. So,
yes.
there's so many amazing facets to it. It's not just pouring liquor. It's not being a bartender. It's not just making just making product or giving a tour.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many facets to it. So much goes into it. So many elements in the business, and so many different ways that people can be involved. And just
Absolutely.
look at us. We're having a conversation, and it's because of bourbon.
It is. It is. And I went to my first Bourbon Women event. We had one here in Nashville last week. Yeah, last week, which is where I first tasted the Roland Dark Fire, which, obviously fell in love because I now have a bottle of it. But it was, you walk in and everybody is so knowledgeable and so friendly and so open. And I got to drink some amazing, amazing bourbon and whiskey while I was there. But it was also just a great group of people to meet and to get to know and to learn from. I mean, it was phenomenal. And it's interesting you say that about the history. That's one of the things that kind of hooked me early on is there is such a rich history and tradition that does go hand in hand with how this country was started and formed. I mean, the first legislation from what's now the FDA was all about liquor. So I think that
Yep.
speaks to how interwoven it is and who we are. And when you look at stories like, Uncle Nearest and all that we've discovered in the history there and the building of that brand and so many others, it really is a part of who we are. And bourbon specifically obviously has to be a US made spirit. So it's so much around who we are at our core that I think it's just a fascinating tale and a great thing to drink. So,
Absolutely. 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 All right, my dear. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much. And
Thank you.
be in touch.
All
All
right.
right.
Sounds
Take
good. Talk
All
soon.
right.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye.
You can find out more about Christy at ChristyPruitt-Haynes.com and her newest venture, SipAndSmokeExperience.com. And as always, please be sure to subscribe to all of our social channels. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, cheers from Stirrups and Spirits. We'll see you on the next episode.
We just pop some Zans if you wanna fuck.